一个星期工作7天，早上是从6点半开始上班，上到晚上的12点以后有一家通宵，有的加到2点、4点。
这都是什么玩具啊？
这都是迪士尼的狗仔啊，还有公仔。
The United Nations International Labour Organization defines sweatshops as a form of forced labor. The abysmal conditions of physical and verbal abuse, excessive pay deductions, and indecent working environment such as bad air quality or lack of adequate protection are still suffered by many workers.
আমি যখন গার্মেন্টে চাকরি করি তখন গার্মেন্টের অবস্থা ভালো ছিল না, গার্মেন্টের অবস্থা খুব খারাপ ছিল, কিন্তু আস্তে আস্তে এখন গার্মেন্টের অবস্থা মোটামুটি ভালো, কিন্তু
The average Indonesian garment workers receive 0.34 cents in US dollars per hour of work. Believe it or not, this wage is among the highest of global garment workers.
The world was shocked when the Rana Plaza incident happened in Bangladesh. That building, housing several garment factories, collapsed. Despite reports from its workers of cracked walls, the Rana Plaza building management ignored these complaints. The workers were even threatened with beating and withholding of wage if they don't continue working in the building. Subsequent investigations confirmed that the building violated several codes and was constructed illegally. This collapse killed more than 1,000 people and injured more than 2,000. Most of them were women who made clothes we buy from brands like Mango, H&M, and Zara.
The inhumane logic for these corporations is simple. Lower wages mean lower production costs, which means they receive more in revenue for sales of their goods. This is not only happening abroad, but inside Indonesia as well. Multinational mega brands like Nike and Gap go to countries like Indonesia, India, and Cambodia to make the product they sell for an unrealistically low price.
$1.25 a day after you've paid for your rent, water, electricity, any major transportation costs, you're going to be left on average with roughly 7,000 rupiah per day.
We found it out in the first week that we were there. There's no way that you can live on $1.25 a day and maintain your human dignity. It's just not possible.
Working conditions in these factories are inhumane, often cramped up, and is a fire hazard. While a pair of Nikes can go higher than $100, an Indonesian factory making products for Nike was revealed to pay inhumane wages and verbally and physically abusing its laborers. Laborers were reported that they were slapped and kicked by their foremen for making a mistake when cutting materials. Laborers were also forced to live in slums, sharing toilet and bath water with other families, receiving only $1.26 for a day's work.
We met with one worker, Giulianto. He told us because he was union organized and he was trying to form an independent union.
He was threatened at gunpoint. He had his house ransacked. He was given death threats and he had to flee back to his home village because, in fear of his life. Nike headquarters in Beaverton, Oregon had faxed an info sheet out to all the factories to be placed on the wall for all workers to see that read, if you are approached by Jim Keedy, Leslie Kretzer, or Mike Pierantozzi,
do not speak to them. They're only to speak to management. There will be severe consequences if you're found talking to them.
Nike acknowledged that all of these abuse happened, but also stated that there was nothing they could do because they hired production companies to produce their goods for them, and that these abuses should be attributed to these companies instead.
I was arrested by the army, the local army in East Java. They kicked me and they used their fists and their sticks and their booth to hurt me and to torture me in front of the workers to show them an example.
I think that the majority of workers are saying, look, we don't want you to pull out the jobs. Like, we want to work. We like to work, you know. We want to make the shoes. We were proud of what we do, but we don't want to be exploited. Like, why can't you just let us meet our basic needs?
We're talking about food, clothing, housing, healthcare, education, being able to take care of your kids, and some modest savings.
This condition continues until today. One example is popular ice cream brand Ace's factory laborers who have demanded their rights be fulfilled since 2017 to no avail. Pay deductions and indecent hours for pregnant laborers are just the beginning of the problem. The company which houses AC, PTL Penfood Indonesia, have reportedly discriminated its workers involved in labor unions. Such workers receive warning letters just because they attended union meetings, while other workers who were not involved in unions got away with 12 days of absence without consequence. These problems are only magnified for women. Pregnant laborers were reportedly forced to lift 10 heavy plastic rollers weighing 10 kilograms each. These pregnant women were also forced to sweep and mop in a squat position and placed in a production section involving dangerous chemicals. Even when the government has a social security program for workers, none of the laborers in AC received them. Heti Kustiawati and Asil, both laborers for AC, had to pay medical fees out of their own pocket for injuries they suffered at work. Heti was exposed to ammonia, and Asil's eyes were burnt and swollen from a fire.
From a legal perspective, sweatshops violate Article 28 of Indonesia's constitution, which guarantees the right to work and fair and proper remuneration and employment treatment for every person. What's more, under Article 76 of the Act of Manpower in Indonesia, employers are obligated to maintain decency, morality, and security in the workplace. Article 88 of this Act also guarantees at least minimum wage payment to laborers. Working hours are also regulated to 40 hours a week, and that overtime has to be based on consent for no longer than 14 hours a week. Article 99 of this Act also obligates employers to provide social security for their laborers. Meanwhile, Article 3 of Indonesia's Work Safety Law requires that employees be given safety equipment for their work. Until today, sweatshop laborers are the victims of this gap between the law and what happens in reality.
Evidently, there are laws in place that would, in theory, protect these workers. But the problem here is not the lack of law, but rather the lack of concrete mechanisms for the government to assess and ensure companies' compliance with these laws. Without these mechanisms in place, Indonesia would be violating their international obligations to guarantee freedom of association and collective bargaining, and to eliminate all forms of forced or compulsory labor under the ILO Declaration on Fundamental Principles and Rights at Work and its follow-up. The government should have a mechanism in place to check what working conditions are like in these factories without prior notice, to ensure that the conditions they see in routine assessments are the conditions that are actually happening every day. Strengthened labor inspection and the protection of collective bargaining is key to ensure corporations' compliance with the law.
It is clear now that sweatshops are a systemic problem. The government still has a lot to do to solve this problem, but that doesn't mean we cannot do our part in working for change. Like most things, change begins with small steps. As customers, we have the purchasing power. As we empower big corporations to get away with their violations by adding to their revenue and buying their products, we can actually do the opposite. We can demand accountability, choose to buy better, and choose which companies we would like to buy from. That way, corporations will understand that it is not enough for them to produce the goods. But as corporations, they have the responsibility to protect the rights of their laborers as well.